Okay, let's get started. So this is the first class for a longer term session, which is going to be 6 to 8 weeks. Previously, I've been cooperating with Financial Youth Club on teaching 2 to 3 classes during the last summer holiday, as well as during this winter holiday. And then I thought this is actually a good initiative to democratize knowledge and also to democratize certain trends that we've seen across the globe. Because usually, like many of us may be thinking about, the future is already there, but it's just not evenly distributed. So that is why I thought, why not start a class that talks about how venture capitalists and founders think, and also introduce some new knowledge on certain new trends in investment field about certain technologies. And the first class I want to give out is called 0 to 1 Agents. To unearth the contrarian secrets that execute themselves. It's just a combination between Peter Thiel's book, 0 to 1, and the way in which AI agents work. So I was trying to structure the course into 2 parts. One part is going to be about a specific investor or founder that has shaped the landscape of today's venture capital industry. And also the second thing, of course, is a recent technology that everyone should be looking into. And to get started, we can watch a video. It is by Founders Fund in their annual annual shareholder meeting. Hope that's engaging and interesting so that we can level up the energy.
Instead of looking up to Thomas Jefferson or looking up to Nikola Tesla or looking up to Magellan. I mean, kids, Magellan's a lot cooler than Justin Bieber. He circumnavigated with one ship the entire planet. That's destiny, that's will, that's striving, that's being a trailblazer and explorer, going into space, mathematics, quantum mechanics, the secrets of the universe. It's all there. Life is fiery with its beauty, its incredible detail. Tuning into it. Unlock your human potential. Defeat the globalists who want to shutter your mind, your doorways to perception. I want to see you truly live. I want to see you truly be who you are. I don't want my progeny who's coming, my unborn grandchildren and great-grandchildren, to live in this nightmare system these control freaks have created. That's why I don't care about my own life, except I want to continue to live to fight them. That's why I don't have fear. I only have fear of myself and my flesh and not being up to the challenge. I ask you to look in the mirror and ask yourselves, what are you doing in this time of great challenge? What are you doing to unlock minds? Once you unlock a mind, once you unlock somebody, then they can unlock their soul.
So basically, this video was shot in 2020 during the pep talk by Founders Fund, which is Peter Thiel's personal venture capital fund that invested in SpaceX, Facebook, Palantir, Anduril, etc. And the theme was quite interesting, is because he was emphasizing in an ever-changing time what mankind can really achieve. Made a very strange but interesting analogy that Magellan is going to be more cool than Justin Bieber because Magellan sailed across the globe, while Justin Bieber, of course, he's also cool, but he makes songs. And he was a huge believer of this kind of leap forward of technology, but he is also very controversial on this same idea. But anyways, this is why we need to get started with this course, and how I want to put Peter Thiel as the first person that we can introduce. Just a second, yeah. Before that, yeah, why this course? I really enjoy reading science fiction by William Gibson. He was he inspired a large number of authors and movie makers, including The Matrix, Cyberpunk, and etc. And he was saying the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. I've seen the same word over and over again in the past 2 to 3 years. There are lots of colleagues that have been posting on Twitter, have been posting everywhere to say that if we can pay $10 or $20 to experience the future, it is actually worth it, and is also very much worth it to distribute the future to everywhere, no matter what our age is and where our location is. And just a little bit about me. My name is Jimmy. I was previously working at GenFund and Hearst Ventures. GenFund is one of the leading early-stage venture capital funds in China that invested in 10 or 20 unicorns, including those that are already operating in the United States on autonomous driving, AI agents, deep tech, and social media. And then Hearst Ventures is a corporate venture capital by American corporation Hearst Group, who were the owners of one of the largest media brands in the world, including Cosmopolitan and NBC News and ABC News, etc., as well as ESPN. And they were also one of the first early investors back in 1990s of Netscape, which is the first, I will believe, internet browser that later on went IPO and got acquired for a couple $2 billion, which later on created another venture fund by the two founders of Netscape, which is called Andreessen Horowitz. And primarily at that time, my focus was to look at projects in Southeast Asia, in Japan, as well as in South Asia, on Gen AI, logistics stacks, etc. And back in my time in GenFund, my focus was on AI agents, particularly in consumer apps. I was trying to find out what kind of consumer application we might see, and also can we find any AI native gaming back in 2025? And if not, when is Singularity Point gonna be? So that was basically my work back then. And apart from that, I'm also directed at LSE entrepreneurs. We are a society that make conversations with the top founders. We have talked with people from the founder of Vandler, which is one of the most active VC funds in the world. I've talked with SoftBank, investors from Databricks, as well as the CEO of blockchain.com, etc. We've also talked with people like Harry Stebbins. If anyone listens to 20 VC podcasts, it's also very interesting. And yeah. Just to brief about the goals, it doesn't have to be a very fancy one. Just two goals to me that is important. First is, after the course, I want to make sure that everyone understands the most important trends that is shaping the world today. And secondly is to make sure that everyone here has the ability to think like a founder or think like a venture capitalist. And my biggest hope is to see one day there's gonna be another founder came from you guys. Maybe some of you have built your own funds. Maybe some of you have led another technological revolution in your domain, which is something I really want to see. Okay, so in the future times, the class is gonna be in a typical 3 sections. One, we will talk about the recent market news, what is going on. And hopefully after the first time, I show you how we can interpret events. And then you guys can also search up the news that is going on in the VC market, as well as in the tech world. It's not just in AI, it can be in blockchain, it can be in biotech, any domain you're actually interested in. And then the second part is we're going to talk about a specific founder or investor that is meaningful to learn about. We're going to go through people from Sequoia, Don Valentine, to Sam Altman, and yes. And then the last part is going to be a technology that we should try to use and we should try to learn about. And yeah, first of all, we'll come to the market signals coming to this week. 2 interesting recent funding rounds. One is, I guess everyone knows, the $110 billion recent round led by Amazon, NVIDIA, and SoftBank on OpenAI. This is a strange one, actually, because just 1 to 2 weeks ago, Anthropic received another $30 billion round, also by the same group of investors. So in the past, we say the venture capital firms, when they say we support OpenAI, they're not going to support OpenAI's rival, but now it's becoming a multiplayer game. So as a fund, you bet on both OpenAI and Anthropic. And this round is bringing OpenAI to $840 billion valuation. And there has been skeptics on what kind of capabilities OpenAI can actually do, given that recent Anthropic has been giving huge challenges to its own modes. When we say modes, is how much retainment can it still obtain, how many people are still coding on OpenAI, how many people are still chatting with OpenAI, how many people are using the API from OpenAI. We have seen huge shift from OpenAI to Anthropic, and especially in recent times, Anthropic has been shockingly improving faster and faster when they launched Cowork, which later on created a massive, I would say, impact on the stock market in the United States, especially the traditional SaaS market. IBM was hit, ServiceNow was hit, Salesforce could also be hit. And so, yeah, it's interesting to see that at this point in time, OpenAI raised another 110 billion. And there are also rumors going around saying they're going to skip GPT 5.3 all the way to GPT 5.4 so that they can outcompete with their currently state-of-the-art model. So another thing that we can interpret from this is that now these model companies are no longer startups. They are an important global infrastructure. And it's just like what we see back in early 2000s when people were building these large manufacturers of computers or these large cables under the sea. OpenAI is an infrastructure, and Anthropic is also infrastructure. And then the second interesting funding going on in Europe is Wave's new Series D, which is going to be $1.2 billion. And they were not just backed by these companies, they were also backed, I believe, by Mercedes-Benz and very much a large number of traditional manufacturers in the car industry, because essentially Wave, this company, is a leading manufacturer, a leading research company in autonomous driving here in Europe. And Europe has been lagging behind for quite a long time on this AI race. And that is why, I guess, after so many rounds of funding for Wave, they are recently trying to scale up the speed in which they do R&Ds and the speed in which they can combine the technologies with the manufacturers in Europe. This is also an interesting thing to look at. And then if we look at the capital flows towards the inference and urban models, one is the emergence of an anti-NVIDIA narrative. When we say anti-NVIDIA narrative, is that since 2023, we have seen a never-ending rise in NVIDIA's market cap and its increasingly strong monopoly in distribution on research and development of the GPUs. But then we have seen a huge amount of new challengers came all the way from ARM, AMD's, even Google's TPU, and now newly founded companies, for example, Accelerator and Supernova, that are trying to bring down the inference cost so that they can run in real data centers. Because if we see NVIDIA has got increasing bargaining power as the United States, as well as European countries are expanding the data center training, this CapEx is going to be tremendous. And at some point, it will become too costly for anyone to burden. So companies are actively investing and looking for these alternatives, which is also something we should be noticing about. And maybe if we are trying to invest in NVIDIA, it's time for us to think twice before we bet on big towards this company. And then regarding open source models, we are seeing just today, Reflection AI is seeking a 20 billion valuation in a new funding round because they are trying to create a safe alternative to the original black box APIs provided by OpenAI and Anthropic. So that is something that is truly meaningful, because in the past we have seen this huge debate in closed source model and open source models. And clearly, we are seeing these differences in applications of both of these model strategy, as well as their way of development. And it's interesting to see at this point in time, people are betting on Reflection AI, and also as some kind of a neo lab, maybe, I'm just saying maybe, companies are looking at alternatives than the big incumbents currently dominating the LLM field. And it was also quite reasonable to see people funding from Safe Superintelligence by Ilya to Thinking Machines led by Mira Muradi, just to find out, are there any new ways to train models? Are there any new ways to achieve the goal of so-called AGI, if that ever exists? And then there were two interesting news regarding just earlier this week, I guess, the acquisition of Vercept by Anthropic. Essentially, what does Vercept do? It helps you with computer use and helps you with browsing. So Anthropic essentially is trying to acquire as much of these companies as possible to build up its own agentic ability. And given that they're already very strong in that, this is going to enhance it even further. We're going to see that this model infrastructure company are going to shift from just answering questions towards operating on your computer. And for now, it's going to be the answering emails for you or making linking outreaches for you. But in the future, it's going to be more than that. Maybe on tax auditing. Maybe it is on the ERP building. Maybe it is going to be about launching another marketing campaign. We're going to see these operations becoming more often. And in the past, I thought this is going to happen, let's say, in 2030. But apparently, earlier this year, we are already seeing a huge shift from traditionally using models to do all the tasks into automations using agents. And lastly on the news is about the US agency switching to OpenAI after Anthropic's CEO, Dario, insisted that they are not going to comply with the Department of War. OpenAI started to collaborate with the Pentagon. And this is going to tell us that these companies are not just about technology companies. When they have become large enough and powerful enough, it is a political matter, not just a technological matter. The same can be applied when we are trying to evaluate companies like Palantir and all companies like Anduril. And lastly, regarding the US and China rival, we are going to see greater divergence on the pathways for the two countries on developing AI. China will continuously focus on the multimodal behavior, and because of the problems with access to US chip makers. And US, on the other hand, is going to continuously use the scaling laws and the scaling strategies to build up stronger models and stronger thinking, stronger reasoning capabilities. So we are going to see a world where we are seeing extremely cheap models from China, when on the other hand, extremely sought-out and frontier models from the United States. I won't say which one of them is going to outcompete. They will have completely different usage and completely different, I would say, customers. One example is when it comes to startups, most of them are going to use the API by DeepSeek and Quan, even though it's in European countries. I did have some conversations with many founders in the region, and out of surprise, most of them are using the API from Alibaba. Their model capability is just a bit lower than OpenAI, let's say close to GPT 5.1's capabilities, and the same is for DeepSeek. Yeah, the cost is going to be drastically lower than OpenAI, so this is going to become another competitive edge for these Chinese models. And but then it came to another idea nowadays people were discussing about is tokens are going to be much cheaper because of these efforts, but tokens have different quality. So compared with 2023, the GPT-4 tokens are much cheaper than it is today, right? But no one's going to use the GPT-4 token because the quality of GPT-4 is just much less than using using Claude Opus, let's say 4.6, or using Gemini 3.1. So there is going to be this kind of divergence of token prices and token qualities. And then another thing is that there is going to be huge competition on the switching between different models. I tried to import my memory from OpenAI to Anthropic already, because Anthropic has built up this automatic prompt that can export all the memories of the conversation with OpenAI. The same applies to Google, so that they can lower the switching cost. Because one of the biggest problems nowadays is the memory of a user. And that is why, for example, previously I didn't switch from OpenAI to Anthropic. But now with strong abilities to switch memories, the competition between models is going to be even stronger. So maybe in 2026, competition will be about how we turn the model's capabilities into a greater product, as well as how we can stronghold our distribution channel, not only about a researcher making benchmarks even higher. This is going to be something that is quite different than what we are expecting 2 years ago. Okay, so now we are coming to part 3, from 0 to 1. Peter Thiel is quite an interesting person. He is not a technical guy. He graduated from Stanford with a law degree, so he was about to become a lawyer, but then he started a technology company, which fits into his political view about how money should be, why money should be online, why money should be decentralized, why money should, in some ways, bypass the traditional incumbents in the banking sector. And that is why some years ago, he was a big fan of cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Ethereum. And yes, he was born in Frankfurt, so he is essentially a German-born investor, but he studied philosophy at Stanford under Rene, who is quite a famous person regarding his notion on human beings' nature of imitating each other. I will introduce that later. He co-founded PayPal and sold it to eBay for $1.5 billion back in the 2000s. But now PayPal is another major public company that is much larger than that. And he made a very wise decision to make an angel investment in Facebook at a price as low as 500,000 and returned him with over $1 billion. And he was a co-founder of one of the major artificial intelligence for governmental use, for intelligence use, and for national security use, which is Palantir. And he also built Founders Fund, which backed perhaps one of the most contrarian and controversial companies on earth, because he is himself has very controversial contrarian views about the world. To introduce about the person, we need to first learn about what the PayPal mafia is. During the early times of PayPal, he recruited a huge amount of talents that later on, when they left PayPal, built an entire tech ecosystem as well as an investor ecosystem. We have Reid Hoffman, Elon Musk, and Steve Chen that founded YouTube, Roloff Bolther that founded Sequoia Capital. Each one of these companies have been truly outstanding. For example, LinkedIn, as soon as Reid Hoffman left PayPal, he became one of the early founders of LinkedIn. That still, until now, is one of the major platforms for people to use to connect with each other during networking. And Affirm was basically a corporate version of Facebook, I would say, at the time. And it also got acquired. Affirm, that's Yammer. Affirm is a company that is focusing on buy now, pay later, which is a fintech platform, essentially doing loan business. And interesting, the loan business is perhaps one of the most money-making business online or in the tech sector. Many major tech companies, for example, in China, they are not essentially platform companies. For example, there is a company called 360. It is one of the leading security company in the cyber field, but their biggest profit center is to lend money to people. So Affirm made a wise choice to lend money to people, building this kind of fintech platform. And Roloff Bolther was one of the managing partners of Sequoia Capital that later on created legendary investments in the field as well. So all these people combined, they built companies in the value of more than trillions. I mean, Elon Musk himself has built companies value more than $1 trillion. So that's how we can see the impact of a PayPal mafia. Similar concepts also emerge in different countries. One example I can give is about, in the case of China, there was a company that is the Chinese, which later on incubated ByteDance, because the founder of ByteDance inside that small company. And then it also incubated companies such as Meituan, which is the Uber in China. So we are seeing this kind of trend where people gather the brightest founders inside of one company, and then when the company exited, no matter failure or succeeded, they will later become a major talent hub if we trace it back in time. So one cool question that Thiel always thinks about is what kind of truth do few people agree with you? And this question is his entire investment philosophy, which is what kind of contrarian view do you have on a certain industry that everybody will disagree you on, but you have sufficient amount of evidence and sufficient amount of reasoning to support your view. One, let's say, at the time is competition for losers. Economically speaking, people will say competition is good. When I first read about 0 to 1, I was pretty shocked when someone that embraces libertarianism just is saying that competition is for losers and we should pursue monopoly. And he made this analogy back in 2012 between the comparison of US airlines and Google. US airlines, they serve millions of passengers every single year, but the profit per trip at that time is 37 cents, which is extremely low because of how much competition there is inside the air industry in the United States. You will always see cheaper flight tickets. And the flight costs, of course, it's extremely high compared with other more profit, I would say more infrastructure light industries. And at the same time, Google at that time, its profit margin was 21%. And the market cap is way more than all US airlines combined. Until now, if you compare all airlines, their combined market cap is going to be way lower than the tech industry. One big reason is how fierce the competition is. And many companies, for example, JetBlue, EasyJet, or Ryanair, their focus is to make sure that the price of the airline is as cheap as possible. And they are doing this in an extreme sense, such that a clothes you wear or a bag you have can also be a limited factor for the cost. And that is why they will limit the size of a bag. This is a strong proof that fierce competition make companies passive and make them have to create this ever-ending evolution. So he quote, all happy companies are quite different. Each one they earns on monopoly by solving a unique problem. And the failed companies, they are the same. They fail to escape competition. This somehow can link to currently the fierce competition in agentic AI, as well as in the application layer of AI. Because of vibe coding, I'm not saying it's bad. I love vibe coding myself, but I do know that because we can ship products much faster than before, this is create competition, which means that the profit generating model will fail as we scale. And in this sense, only companies that have set up a monopoly can win the longer term game. So then, yes, we come to a problem that every great company will build on certain secrets. For example, Facebook. That's an interesting one, because at that time, social media was not a new thing. We have MySpace and Thiel. MySpace was particularly large, and the only difference between Facebook and MySpace is that Facebook is based on real identity, while MySpace is anonymous. And people will assume that on the internet you should set up anonymous stuff because anonymity makes sure that users can protect their own privacy. But the fact is, if you want to make sure that your product is an extension of your real life, you should actually bond your real identity with the technology, with the social network. And that is why Facebook succeeded, because he believes that a real world identity social network can achieve monopoly over user attention. And this kind of view was perceived by Google at that time as fad. Fad means fashion for kids. And that's what they fancily called fad, because it makes no money at all. So this is an important thing that people don't recognize and people disagree about. And usually we will say the best businesses are always built on truth. Most people cannot see or accept yet. And then came to the question or comparison between 0 to 1 and 1 to n. What does that mean? We can make comparison between technology progress and globalization. So technology progress is a 0 to 1. So you do something nobody has done before. Maybe you test about a new technology. Maybe you test about a new way to run a business. This is a 0 to 1 thing. For 1 to n, we can spread across the same mode of working from maybe a country, let's say from the US to China, from the US to Southeast Asia, or to South Asia. We call it globalization. So it's going to be a horizontal progress by copying what actually works. Both of them works well, but to create a true giant, he will believe that we need to build the mindset that we should make something from 0 to 1. So that is why he said, we want to fly in cars. Instead, we got 140 characters. He was being sarcastic on Twitter, which is true that their original code has 140 characters. And the original limit of how long you can post is only 140 characters long. This is an interesting comparison between what kind of founders we want to be and what will become way bigger than before. Another one is what famously people talk about, and maybe some of you, if you listen to my first class during the winter session, is the power law. That a single investment can return an entire fund. So venture capital returns should not be focusing on your average return. That say, oh, I don't want to lose money on my all 100 companies. You should say, I want my 10 companies to be my top performers. And then one company out of 10 companies can cover the entire size of my fund, so that we can create very strong returns. For example, SpaceX at that time, the valuation went from 671 million to 18.2. Now it's $1 trillion, so it's way bigger. 18.2. What I say about that is at the time founders funds, one of their early stage fund closes, the value of that share is $18.2 billion, which is like 27 times larger. And if you look at Facebook, it's going to be 2,000 times larger. So founders fund in history has a 26x return at this peak of the time. What does that mean? Usually, if you achieve 2 times, we'll say it's good enough. If it's 3 times, it's outstanding times. This is beyond any person's imagination. And this would somehow prove that their way of investments on the contrarian founders is somehow true. So what is Founders Fund? Peter Thiel actually founded, before Founders Fund, a hedge fund. It's called Clarion, but later on it failed during the 2000 financial crisis. And then at the same time, he founded a fund called the Founders Fund, but then he scaled it up after 2008. Their philosophy is that, first of all, you never remove a founder. So usually, as a VC, you have the right to remove your founder. But Founders Fund, it believes that once it bet against one single person, this person can never leave this company. We can never say, because now we are coming to a time of managerial scaling, or managerial economies of scale. We are introducing a CEO from McKinsey instead of continuously using this founder. So you don't remove a founder. And secondly is that they bet on hard tech, which is quite rare in the US nowadays, I guess. But recently it's becoming more active on betting on hard tech or deep tech. But long ago, they were investing in defense, biology, energy, and space industries. And then the third one is on concentration on a single company. Once they commit to one company, they will continuously fund them for 1, 2, 3, even all the way to all the rounds, because they have enough money to do so, and also this will maximize their entire return. So then, what was actually supporting Peter Thiel's personal philosophy, or what shaped him? Perhaps one of the most important person that ever affected Peter Thiel is René Girard. He was a philosopher at Stanford University that raised a concept called mimetic desire. What it essentially say is that every human being, we have been desiring similar things. We want things. We have desire because other people want these desires. For example, you want to be rich. The reason you want to be rich is because other people want to be rich. And so there's becoming a competition between similar people and to imitate each other. And then there will eventually become a crisis inside a community, since people, all of them are trying to mimic a person that they admire so much. And some of the times, this creates conflicts between people. And this would deter innovation as well. Imagine everyone to stop innovating. Instead, they compete by mimicking each other. So this is going to destroy the value you have. And if we apply that to the business side, when companies, they do overly similar things, this is also a kind of illustration of mimetic desire. And usually doesn't really end well. There will become, let's say, several companies doing the same things. For example, in the taxi industry in the past, when Uber first launched, there were much more competitors in this field back in Asia, back in China, back in the United States as well. But then you will see fierce competition, what companies are losing billions of dollars just to become the only monopoly power in the field. And the reason is because the strategies are largely very similar. We all subsidize our users. We all make sure that our drivers can get the most money, so that at that time you can have the most drivers. We all make sure we monopoly a certain area. And this is something that can harm the efficiency of business. As an implication for PayPal, Peter Thiel assigned each employee with very unique responsibilities, so that let's say two persons cannot do the same thing. Because if you do the same thing, you will have comparison. If you have comparison, that will become internal rivalries, and then which become the ever-ending evolution of competition, which is something we don't want to see. Another interesting thing is the Thiel Fellowship. It's something unique that funds the dropout kid from college. And after several years, they have been backing founders such as Vitalik Buterin, if anyone buys Ethereum, and Dylan Field, who is the founder of Figma, that recently got IPO, I think, last year, as well as Chris Olah, that is from Anthropic. And the hit rate of unicorns is quite unique. It's roughly about 14%. And the total valuation created from these dropout kids is 750 billion. Thiel himself doesn't believe that college education can bring in innovation. So that is why he encourages kids to drop out of college, which is something hugely controversial. People are also criticizing for encouraging people to leave higher education. This is extremely risky. And but somehow this kind of philanthropy has been regarded as misdirected. So Thiel Fellowship managed to succeed in backing these founders, which later on built great companies. And that is why, I guess, it created a culture in the Silicon Valley that you should be a dropout to be a founder. But then it will become interesting mimetic competition again, because nowadays people will try to standardize these kids to say, okay, it's like a ticking box. You dropped out. You are from Stanford. You do AI, and then you previously worked for Amazon. And then once you satisfy all of these traits, people will start to say, all right, we can now invest in you. And once this happens, all kinds of people are gonna shape their narrative close to this kind of standard, which again become a homogeneous competition. Well, the point I'm trying to make is when being a dropout is no longer unique, but instead it became something that is fashionable. This is against the very first goals the Thiel Fellowship actually started. But we humans, we eventually cannot escape from this philosophical fact. But of course, even though he is a successful guy, he didn't succeed in building his hedge fund. And he didn't succeed investing in YouTube, even though YouTube co-founder is a member of PayPal Mafia. And he didn't invest in Tesla because he doesn't believe in climate change. So the most brilliant people can also get wrong. But what really matters is the magnitude of your biggest bet, not your biggest bet on an average scale. Okay, so if we want to bring about a takeaway for the Thiel playbook, one is to seek monopoly when you build a company, or in the future when you start to invest in the company, you will tend to ask, is it going to be a monopoly in the future? And two is, does the founder have a secret that nobody else's have? Does he have a worldview that is completely different from other founders? And number three is, if you want to invest in a company that is going to be truly great, don't just think about 0 to 1, create something or invest in something genuinely new, even though people think it's stupid. And lastly is, we should respect power law, that when we build portfolios, there's always going to be there always should be a company that outperforms all the other members in my portfolio, rather than having modest successes. Okay, so then we will come to agentic AI as a topic. We can think about these questions during what I talk about these things. So for example, do we think agents are genuinely a 0 to 1 moment? Do we think people are getting wrong about AI agents in certain things? Okay, so from chatbots to colleagues, if anyone has ever played around OpenClaw, that's an interesting little cute AI that's gone viral on GitHub. I think they've got more than 250,000 stars on GitHub nowadays, which surpasses React, that has long been the champion on GitHub. So agents has become has shift from AI that talks to you into AI that actually works for you. And I played around with OpenClaw a bit. I just insert that in my WhatsApp, and usually when I want to write an email or something, or when I want to do research, I'll just tap in on WhatsApp, and he's going to respond to me very quickly. Okay, so maybe some of you will know, some of you don't know, but I will still try to explain it in a simple way. Traditionally speaking, prompt responses are going to be just one user interaction, and they just react to your input, but they don't make decisions on how do I say, they don't make decisions for you. And they are essentially a large function. We can regard that as a large function, that's a calculator of a model. But then when we shift from the traditional AI into agentic AI, we are seeing that these things, they have goals that is being set. And they can do reasoning. They can do, for example, they can do planning when you're trying to give them tasks to write PowerPoints or to run a model, let's say run a DCF model for you. And they have access to tools, to your browser, to your APIs, and then they have a strong memory, which is more like human beings. And lastly is that it knows how to iterate like human beings do. For example, when we do work, we are going to fail all the time, but we try, when then we fail again, we're going to fix the problem. So this is something agentic AI is having in the recent times. And And if we compare that, I would say traditional AI is going to be like our brain, but without our hands that can use the tools, without certain guidance that we should set up goals, without training that we should reason about how we break down tasks, we human beings cannot really evolve, right? So this shift is going to be from AI as a calculator to AI as your intern. So how we got there? Back in 2022, some Wei, he's a researcher that raised the idea of chain of thought, which then created GPT-4. Chain of thought is truly something important, is because it suddenly turned AI from pre-training to an era where we should concentrate on reasoning. And reasonabilities is by far the strongest and maybe the most efficient path to achieve more efficient AI. So then back in 2023 March, GPT-4 just appeared. And then we started to see AutoGPT, which was one of the first attempts of building agentic AI. And then in 2023, we started to have a tool called function calling. And function calling is essentially to have infrastructure being inserted with OpenAI's API. And that is a shift from, let's say, AI as like monkeys to monkeys trying to use stones to attack each other, or like tool use. And then back in 2024, we started to see Anthropic's computer use, which is very important because this has opened up a new experiment on AI's ability to browse and directly interact with our interface. So imagine that your AI can now interact on your computer, that can use your Google, and that can do whatever human beings do on a computer. So we started to give AIs their own version of computer, which is another important thing. And then a month later, Anthropic introduced MCP, which is basically like a huge plug that can connect your model with different kinds of tools that can make things much easier. Until then, in 2026, January, Sequoia started to say this year we might see the emergence of AGI, which is a long horizon agents that has stronger capability. When we say long horizon agents, it means that they should have longer memory and longer context capabilities. I'm not sure if you guys have noticed. So when you talk with the AI, and once your time becomes longer, its ability to respond to you is going to be much lower. And sometimes we say it's going to be stupid. The reason is because they just started to lose their memory and context, so they cannot recall why you initially had a conversation with them. So in that sense, how we make sure that every single agent has got longer memory is the key to make sure agents can build ready-to-ship products. So what essentially does agent need? At the very basic level is an AI model. So we should have a brain that can reason, and it's like the knowledge we have in our mind, but without our hands, without our eyes, we don't have the ability to make decisions ourselves. And then secondly, we build resilience on long-running tasks. One example is Manners AI that can run tasks for hours and hours because their context is sustaining. So this is a huge innovation regarding how we can build better agents. We call that context engineering. And ever since then, different companies, startups, as well as large corporations have been focusing on improving the memory of agents and AI. And then we can start to build the orchestration layer. What does that mean? It's like we humans, we have iPad, we have iPhone. For AI, they should have their own operating system. And with that, we can start make them command different tools and even command different agents. And that is what we call as the agentic framework. If you look at long chain, if you look at Crew AI, nowadays people are increasingly using these to orchestrate on their own computer so that we can make sure we can build a complete multi-agent system. And then we start to introduce context. It's something we say we need to have knowledge, we need to have memory, we need to insert live data using the MCP. And lastly is the tools for real-world action. For example, browser use is particularly useful when it comes to making sure every agent has their own personal browser, and code execution, for example, codecs. These are the actuators when they need to make a real-world impact. So to build an agent, it somehow becomes similar to building a robot or to building a human being. And then how do we measure agents? It's another interesting question we need to look at. BSAM Venture Partners, one of the most famous funds that have been running for 100 years, actually. They started as an asset manager, but then became a leading venture capital firm. They look it through and say, yes, we can build from L0 to L6, like what we do on autonomous driving vehicles. So at first, we have no agency. So before 2022, in 2021, 2020 something, AI is essentially a workflow. And you can just make these guys follow your workflow, and it will get stuck once the workflow doesn't really work well. And then we start to give AI the ability to do reasoning, but it needs some kind of guidance. But at this point, they will answer you with, it will give you autonomous answers, right? Then to L2, we start to build copilots. At first, it started at GitHub, and then from Microsoft Copilot to all kinds of Copilot that emerged in 2023 and 2024. At that time, it was something that can give you suggestions, but still it's not smart enough. And now I think we are at the time between L3 and L4. And even some people, they are creating L5 level agents. But most people nowadays are using L3.
Jimmy, your voice cut off. Was it a problem?
I use it to run.
Jimmy,
In the past,
your
yes.
voice actually cut off when you were trying to explain after the L5.
Right. Is the voice not is the voice working now?
Yes, it's working now.
Okay. I see. Thank you for noticing. Okay, back to the topic. When it comes to this kind of high autonomy, usually what you do when it comes to using code or code as coding, you will just give it permission on every single task, and you will just watch it doing the codes. This is an illustration of how good the autonomy can be nowadays. There are also people that try to use cursor or manners to do all kinds of autonomous tasks, and at this point in time, we just give them permissions. So every time if he wants to rewrite my code, it will just give back to me and tell me if I gave it a permission or not. Then coming to L4, which is an example of OpenClaw I will introduce later, is that it can do stuff very autonomously. But at this point, it's going to be dangerous. We have seen accidents going on by Meta that the head of safety of agents experimented on OpenClaw to manage her own email account, and then this OpenClaw intentionally delete all the emails in her Meta account, which can result in some losses. So we were warned that we should not give it full autonomy over our own computer. We should actually store it on the cloud or store it in a Mac Mini. But yes, we are close to fully autonomous AI agents that without our feedback, it can itself learn faster than we did. And in the future, some people are already building teams of agents, but for now, it's going to be extremely costly. One of my friends, he built a team of 3 to 4 agents that collaborate with each other when running tasks or building a website. But the one thing he faced is that these agents can argue against each other. That's costly because every single argument these agents make, in every single shit talking they make, these AI make to each other, cost tokens. And this guy, he lost $100 in one single night because the agents were just busy arguing against each other. That made him shut down the experiment. But on the one hand, this is a bit worrying, but on the other hand, it's somehow fun. We might see the abilities for agents to finally reach the L6, that is, they can coordinate with each other in a societal hierarchy or in a societal order. So, what are we seeing already? One huge usage I've been mentioning about lots of the time is coding agents, and they have already achieved more than 1 billion ARR, and it's primarily focused in previously on Cursor, but now it's more on Claude Code. We might see increasing amount of monopolization by Claude Code because it is just so good in doing in running in executing when it comes to build stuff and when it comes to debugging. It has become much stronger compared when I used it last year. Right now, I barely get bugs, so that's something quite strange and something quite new to me. And then for customer service companies, we have Sierra AI that are increasingly taking the place of traditional call centers as well as customer service centers. And with a combination of 11 labs, these AI voices can no longer be distinguished from real humans. And then in the law field, Harvey is actually becoming one of the leading legal tech companies that is getting extremely fast because they can automate what traditional law firms spent months doing. And they are now serving half of the top 100 law firms. And I've already seen news that some law firms are building their own AI workflows. Many of them are the top law firms across the globe. We might see lawyers, I'm not saying replaced, but lawyers being required to be not just someone that is good at judicial level knowledge, but also good at managing agents. And on the research field, I think recently Perplexity, they've raised a new feature called computer use, which is essentially having a similar function as a Bloomberg terminal. And the cost is about, I think, $200 per month. But then compared with the past, when Bloomberg terminals have cost us tens of thousands of dollars, these deep research agents are doing way better than before. And a lot more are appearing. And for example, there is a company that recently got invested by Sequoia that focusing on automating insurance and wealth management. And they are already taking place in large financial institutions. And there is also a company backed by OpenAI, it's called Index, that is already been using private equity companies when it comes to building way better DCF models than the past. So in the past, when it comes to building models, maybe some of you do build models, it's going to take you hours to adjust certain features or certain numbers or certain assumptions. But now it will take you only several minutes to create a model, and then maybe 30 more minutes or an hour more just to try to polish it. And just now I say this year Sequoia said something about, oh, we might come to the time of AGI. And because AGI's definition is too vague, they say that it is the ability to figure things out. And what that means is it no longer needs humans' interaction or intervention if we face a problem, or if it gets stuck. It will automatically figure out different ways when it comes to testing and trialing, and eventually finish the task we assign them with. And that requires stronger knowledge, that requires stronger reasoning abilities, and also that's the most important one, it requires the ability to iterate when it comes to doing a work. One fund is called NFX, and they wrote an article earlier this year, it's called 1,000 Experiments. Is that assume agents have the ability in the future, if long horizontal agents are strong enough, to run 1,000 times experiments, eventually you will get the correct answer, and you will even get a way better answer or solution than than we do, because iteration can offset the probability problem once the agents can fail, and that's something people are working on right now. It's like scaling law, or that agent performance doubles every several months. So if we look at 2 years later, I believe agents can reliably complete tasks that take human expert a full day. But then in that sense, what we should do, that's something maybe I'm thinking about, maybe we should all be thinking about. Okay, so now comes to the fun part, and that's the OpenClaw story. This year, out of expectation, ClawBot was built out, and it was just a fun project, just made for the geeks to deploy in their own computer to play around with, because it's its very strong personality, and it can be integrated in your social media. It can be integrated on WhatsApp. It can be integrated everywhere if you wanted to do it everywhere. And it's not just an intern. It is like a human. They built up their own YouTube. They built up their own, I think, Reddit, and they started to coordinate with each other and trading with each other. And some of them managed to launch cryptocurrency on their own platform. And so that's how these experiments become viral. The guy, Peter Steinberger, he has been a very strong maker in different kinds of small tools in the past. And he didn't intend to turn ClawBot into a large company. So what he really wanted to do is to inspire people with this new application of OpenClaw. So then, just 2 weeks ago, he was acquired by OpenAI. So now he's starting to work with OpenAI and to promote his ability to build agents. And we may find out that many posting on Twitter are now being made by ClawBot, working for some geek on Twitter nowadays. And many of the investors nowadays, they socialize using OpenClaw, because OpenClaw has their own social platforms. And you just assign them tasks to say, oh, can you do networking for me? And then the ClawBot starts to network for if you're a founder, network an investor. If you're an investor, it will network you for a founder. So that's something truly unique and truly interesting. And it's even more shocking to me than the DeepSeek moment earlier last year. So we're looking forward to seeing what's coming next for OpenClaw. But then there are some challenges, of course. One is that demos are demos and productions are different. The reliability of agents in general is going to be 60%. So for one task, it's going to succeed 60%, which is most of the tasks. But then if you do the same task after several rounds, the success rate is going to drop dramatically, because this is a recursion problem. So people are trying to create multiple tasks at the same time, so that we can make sure that we do not create the curse of recursion. What I mean is that instead of doing one task at the same time, and all the way down, let's say, oh, first write this email for me, second find this guy for me, third build this product for me. You should actually make the same agent simultaneously do the 3 or 4 jobs, so that we make sure the reliability is the same at 60%. Secondly, this year, I believe, is going to be the year of safety. Not much people emphasize it yet, but I guess if I have to bet on one types of company that is important today, I would rather bet on security company on agents, because of how important it is if we try to turn these companies into productions. Now, why? Because in big corporates, let's say you are someone as a product manager, you don't want to make you don't want to bear the responsibility that your agent just mess things up. You want to make sure that everything can be audited. You want to make sure everything is transparent. And even though it makes a mistake, the responsibility is not on me. The responsibility is on the agent. And the agent has the ability to provide a full report. And maybe it has the ability to stop itself before it messes things up. So safety will become a huge topic this year, and I think we are going to see more safety problems in the coming maybe 9 months. But of course, this is a bold guess. But I think if we focus too much on overscaling on the capabilities of the models, we might be missing the important points for large companies to adopt it. And that is why it created an adoption gap of only 2%. And among the population in the world, 1.3 people are using AI, but only less than 1% of people are using AI agents. And there is a reason for that. And this is some kind of an agentic AI ecosystem. There are, of course, more than that, and some companies are already being hit by Anthropic. For example, Salesforce, Microsoft, and ServiceNow. They thought they're going to win the AI race, or they're going to ride the wave. But in fact, Anthropic created Anthropic Co-work that later on killed a large amount of traditional SaaS companies. So the agentic AI ecosystem has now seen huge changes, and it's going to be updated on a day-to-day basis. And if we do some search on the internet, you're going to find out lots of new pictures, and every single day there's going to be a new logo added to the already existing agentic AI ecosystem. I remember seeing the ecosystem in 2023, where there were only 2 to 3 model companies, and there was a huge gap in the application layer. But then in this year, the application layer has to be filled out with all kinds of similar companies in the similar domain competing against each other. So if we try to summarize it, we are going to see these shifts in the future. So first of all is that they're no longer co-pilots. They're going to be autopilot. That essentially you will have your own employees of agents, and they're going to be cheaper than ever. And the cost is already dropping. Secondly is that models will no longer be the only way to make sure they're competitive. Once they are commoditized, how to manage them or how to build systems that manage them well will become the new important thing. Lastly is that traditionally speaking, we use SaaS model, right? We do a monthly basis or per-seat pricing. And then because there are so many companies now SaaS model, we can just sit there, earn a bunch of money because the profitability of SaaS is huge. But now, with the emergence of these agents, what they're selling is not like a subscription-based or a per-seat pricing model. They are just selling outcomes to you. For example, you want to achieve building this product within 2 months. You can just hire someone. You can just hire an agent that helps you with that. Somewhat similar to McKinsey, actually. When people hire McKinsey, it's not because they want to hire McKinsey to entirely change the company. It's because our company happens just to need 3 to 4 experts in just 3 months' time. And I don't want to hire them forever. So that's why you hire a McKinsey consultant to come here to help you with all kinds of changes and implementations. And the same is that these AI nowadays, they're becoming the short-term digital labor that you can hire them for maybe a couple of months. And then when the time comes, when your goal achieves, when the outcomes is being shipped, you can just say, okay, I'm now no longer using these agents, and until next time. So lastly, there will come to 4 questions that we might be seeing, combining with what we see from Peter Thiel's eyes. First is agentic AI a 0 to 1 moment, or this is a kind of a 1 to n iteration? And second one is, what is the secret about agents that the market is getting run about? And then where is the creative monopoly opportunity? And lastly, do we think power law apply to agent companies like it did to the early internet? I will share my thoughts first. First, I think regarding is agents a 0 to 1 moment or just a 1 to n iteration, technically speaking, it's somewhat in between. If we're saying agentic AI itself as a 0 to 1, it's not necessarily 0 to 1, because the real 0 to 1 can be traced all the way back to the emergence of Transformer and how Transformer actually created the training of LLMs. So agents are evolving from these LLMs. So it was a one-to-n thing instead of a 0-to-1 moment. But if we're talking about adoption, then I believe this is the adoption for businesses is a 0-to-1 moment, because there has never been a formal adoption of AI before agents. We can have employees using AI to help them with paperwork, but agents, what they essentially do is, for the first time, they are plugged into the workflows of large corporations, and that is a 0-to-1 moment on the application size. And I think secondly is about what is the secret that the market is getting wrong. Some of the common perceptions about agents is that it is something that is replacing SaaS, or it is simply just another version of SaaS. I would say, but also we may underestimate the way in which agents work out, because if you try to measure the size of agents market simply using the size of a SaaS market, it's not going to be a sexy idea. It's essentially that agents should not be regarded as something replacing people. It should be something regarding as working faster and working more 24/7, that eventually creates something called emergence. And what I define emergence as is, for AIs, usually we will see unexpected outcome. For example, GPT is actually an unexpected outcome out of the previous training model. And with every person having multiple agents to manage in the future, it is not essentially just doing the repetitive task of SaaS model like we did before. It is essentially doing very new experimentation that we never imagined to do because they're too costly in the past. And because agents appeared, many experimentation on building products, many experimentation on business models can nowadays emerge using these cheaper ways to manage agents. So that's something I guess we may get wrong when it comes to the predictions. But then comes the question of where the creative monopoly opportunity comes from. There are skeptics on that, actually. Currently, with the acquisition of Manus, what I see and my friends see is that it just showed us the cap of AI agents. So the end game might just be sold to companies like Google, Meta, or Anthropic, and to strengthen one single monopoly in model capabilities. And that's one potential outcome that we're seeing, which means that they were just not big enough to become themselves a complete ecosystem, but instead they were just tools being acquired by larger platforms. That is what's appearing currently, but I am not entirely sure about what we see is going to be true in coming maybe 5 to 10 years. What if, let's say, certain agents become capable enough that they are becoming really hard to, first of all, be replaced, and second of all, to be simply acquired by a large incumbent. In this sense, agents can create a monopoly in a very specified domain. For example, maybe in law, maybe it is in energy field. Take the example of law. No single law firm can acquire Harvey, because Harvey is way larger than most of the law firms, and law firms don't operate like that. And this is something we can regard as a monopoly opportunity for this company if it strengthens its ability in this vertical. And on the other hand is how we can distribute certain companies, because Google has the strongest distribution capabilities, and Anthropic has very strong distribution capabilities, and that is why they are creating this monopoly on the infrastructure level. And if an agents company on an application level also wants to become a monopoly, it will need to figure out how they can turn themselves into an infrastructure for other agents. So that is also something I'm still thinking about, but I guess the answers have not come up yet. And lastly is, does the power law apply to aging companies like it did to the early internet? It definitely does. Usually, I'll give you data. 83% of most funding this month, which is about $189 billion, just go to 3 companies. This is already an implication of power law. So these large companies that are regarded as infrastructure, they are becoming increasingly powerful, that more capital is concentrating on simply these companies. So on the model level, power law applies. But if we talk about the smaller scale, these agents in a particular vertical SaaS or in a particular domain, then I think power law only happens when they successfully plug them inside every single workflow of every single company. And in that sense, they can be a small monopoly power in the relevant field. And I'm still looking forward to seeing a company other than OpenAI or Anthropic that became similar size, or even a size I would say more exciting, that can prove somehow that aging companies have the ability to be too big to be acquired and can themselves be a strong monopoly power in Peter Thiel's lens. That is all for my session for today.